Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Understanding Business 2024. Narrated by Omar Mohsen Ibrahim Fouad. Chapter 3. Doing Business in Global Markets. Page 55. Learning Objectives. After you have read and studied this chapter, you should be able to LO 3-1 discuss the importance of the global market and the roles of comparative advantage and absolute advantage in global trade. LO 3-2 explain the importance of importing and exporting and understand key terms used in global business. LO 3-3 illustrate the strategies used in reaching global markets and explain the role of multinational corporations. LO 3-4 evaluate the forces that affect trading in global markets. LO 3-5 debate the advantages and disadvantages of trade protectionism. LO 3-6 discuss the changing landscape of the global market and the issue of offshore outsourcing. Page 56. Getting to know Ramon L. LaGuarta, CEO of PepsiCo. More than 1 billion times a day, consumers in over 200 countries across the globe either eat or drink a product made by PepsiCo. Although you might know the company best for its signature soft drink, PepsiCo also owns A-list food and beverage brands like Frito-Lay, Gatorade, Quaker, SodaStream, and many more. In fact, the conglomerate's wide portfolio includes 23 brands that each earns more than $1 billion in annual retail sales. As you might expect, it's not easy to run a multinational business that generates more than $70 billion in revenue each year. That's why PepsiCo relies on Chief Executive Officer Ramon LaGuarta's expertise and experience to lead this major global operation. A 25-year veteran of the company, LaGuarta was committed to PepsiCo's core mission to create more smiles with every sip and every bite. Long before he landed the CEO job in 2018, LaGuarta's story begins in Barcelona, Spain, where he grew up and eventually obtained his bachelor's and master's degrees in business administration from the prestigious ESAID Business School. Eager to learn more, he then enrolled in the Thunderbird School of Global Management in Arizona and earned another master's in international management. LaGuarta's impressive talent for languages further fueled his interest in global matters. He is fluent in English, Spanish, French, German, Greek, and Catalan. These skills served him well in his first major job with Chupa Chups, a Spanish candy company famous for its colorful lollipops. He handled a wide range of global assignments that took him across Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and the United States. LaGuardia's deep knowledge of global snack food markets soon attracted the interest of PepsiCo, which hired him in 1996. He served in various management positions before landing an important job as the head of PepsiCo's Europe and Sub-Saharan Africa business. But just because his new position came with a lot of power and covered a lot of territory did not mean that it was easy. In fact, the company considered this region to be its most complex and difficult market to break into. Under LaGuardia's leadership, however, PepsiCo transformed its beverage portfolio by developing a number of juice brands while also advancing the company's sustainability goals. His overwhelming success under difficult circumstances earned LaGuardia a promotion to president of PepsiCo, where he was in charge of the company's corporate strategy and global operations. Soon enough, the board appointed him to the top job of CEO. Once again, though, LaGuardia faced a major challenge a couple years into his tenure as the COVID-19 pandemic upended the business world. Fortunately for him, PepsiCo fared rather well as many consumers stayed at home and bought more snacks for their extended stays on the couch. Nevertheless, COVID-19's impact on the world made a huge impression on LaGuardia and strengthened his commitment to create a more sustainable and resilient food system. PepsiCo sources food products from over 7 million acres of farmland spanning 60 countries, said LaGuardia. We pledge to transform the way we create shared value by operating within planetary boundaries and inspiring positive change for the planet and its people. Ramon LaGuardia is an example of a successful global business person who has proven it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from if you have the will and determination to succeed. He understands cultural and economic differences and knows that PepsiCo has to adapt to global differences and global events that are sometimes beyond its control. For example, the company went from a double-digit product increase in Russia in 2021 to a double-digit loss in 2022. When the company suspended operations in Russia after its invasion of Ukraine, this chapter explains the challenges and opportunities business people such as Ramon LaGuardia face every day in dealing with the dynamic environment of global business. Sources: Global Perspective. Post-pandemic era brings volume upside down. Sources: Global Perspective. post-pandemic era brings volume upside in Coca-Cola, PepsiCo markets. Beverage Digest, September 22nd, 2022. Jennifer Maloney, Heather Haddon, and Emily Glazer. Coca-Cola, PepsiCo pull back from Russia as Ukraine crisis deepens. The Wall Street Journal, March 8th, 2022. PepsiCo, PepsiCo.com, accessed January 2023. Jennifer Maloney, the PepsiCo plan, making it okay to eat chips. The Wall Street Journal, April 22nd, 2023. Page 57. Licensing gives a company the right to manufacture products or use its trademarks for a fee or a royalty. This company is the largest licensor of consumer products in the world. By licensing its products to other companies, it earns a whopping $56 billion a year. Name that company. Find the answer in the chapter. The Dynamic Global Market, LO 3-1. Discuss the importance of the global market and the roles of comparative advantage and absolute advantage in global trade. Have you dreamed of traveling to cities like Paris, London, Rio de Janeiro, Hong Kong, or Tokyo? Today, most companies doing business globally believe it is important for their employees to experience working in other countries. The reason is not surprising. Although the United States is a market of over 334 million people, there are over 8 billion potential customers in the 195 countries that make up the global market. That's too many people to ignore. See Figure 3.1 for a map of the world and important world population statistics. Figure 3.1, world population by continent. As shown on this map, 59.4% of the world's population lives in Asia, while only 7.6% lives in North America. Source: Continent and Region Populations 2023, World Population Review, worldpopulationreview.com, accessed January 2023. It may not be what the rest of the world calls football, but American football is attracting a wide audience outside the United States. London's Wembley Stadium first played host to the NFL's International Series in 2007, and since then, the league has expanded the series to include games in Mexico and Germany. What cultural factors must U.S. sports franchises overcome in order to increase popularity abroad? Today, the United States trades almost $1.9 trillion worth of goods with Canada, Mexico, and China. Costco opened its first store in Shanghai in 2019 and was greeted by such huge numbers of Chinese shoppers that traffic was shut down. The company added 7 more stores in 2022 and plans more openings in 2023. Starbucks has more than 6,000 stores in China and plans to have 9,000 by 2025. Walmart operates over 10,500 stores in 24 countries. Major League Baseball is broadcast in 207 countries and 16 languages. The National Basketball Association, NBA, has played regular seasons games in Japan, Mexico, England, and France. The National Football League, NFL, has played regular season games in London, Mexico, and Germany. NBC paid $2.7 billion to telecast England's Barclays Premier Soccer League in the United States through 2028. U.S. film star Tom Cruise, Dwayne Johnson, and Scarlett Johansson draw large crowds to movie theaters around the globe. Page 58. Because the global market is so large, it is important to understand the language used in global trade. For example, importing is buying products from another country. Exporting is selling products to another country. As you might suspect, competition among exporting nations is intense. The United States is the world's largest importing nation and the second largest exporting nation behind China. This chapter will familiarize you with global business and its many challenges. As competition in global markets intensifies, the demand for students with training in global business is certain to keep growing. Why trade with other nations? No nation, not even a technologically advanced one like the United States, can produce all the products its people want and need. Even if a country did become self-sufficient, other nations would seek to trade with it to meet the needs of their own people. Some nations, like Venezuela and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, have an abundance of natural resources but limited technological know-how. Other countries, such as Japan and Switzerland, have sophisticated technology but few natural resources. Global trade enables a nation to produce what it is most capable of producing and buy what it needs from others in a mutually beneficial exchange relationship. This happens through the process called free trade. Free trade is the movement of goods and services among nations without political or economic barriers. It continues to be a hotly debated concept. Figure 3.2 offers some of the pros and cons of free trade. Figure 3.2, the pros and cons of free trade. Pros: the global market contains over 7.9 billion potential customers for goods and services. Productivity grows when countries produce goods and services in which they have a comparative advantage. Global competition and less costly imports keep prices down, so inflation does not curtail economic growth. Free trade inspires innovation for new products and keeps firms competitively challenged. Uninterrupted flow of capital gives countries access to foreign investments, which help keep interest rates low. Cons: domestic workers, particularly in jobs that are manufacturing based, can lose their jobs due to increased imports or production shifts to low-wage global markets. Workers may be forced to accept pay cuts from employers who can threaten to move their jobs to lower-cost global markets. Moving operations overseas because of intense competitive pressure often means the loss of service jobs and growing numbers of white-collar jobs. Domestic companies can lose their comparative advantage when competitors build advanced production operations in low-wage countries. The theories of comparative and absolute advantage. Countries exchange more than goods and services, however. They also exchange art, sports, cultural events, medical advances, space exploration, and labor. Comparative advantage theory, suggested in the early 19th century by English economist David Ricardo, was the guiding principle that supported the idea of free economic change. Comparative advantage theory states that a country should sell to other countries those products it produces most effectively and efficiently, and buy from other countries those products it cannot produce as effectively or efficiently. The United States has a comparative advantage in producing goods and services such as software development and engineering services. In contrast, it lacks a comparative advantage in growing coffee or making shoes. Thus, we import most of the shoes and coffee we consume. By specializing in trading, the United States and its trading partners can realize mutually beneficial exchanges. A country is said to have an absolute advantage if it can produce a specific product more efficiently than all other countries. Absolute advantage does not last forever. Global competition causes absolute advantages to fade. Today, there are very few instances of absolute advantage in global markets. Page 59. Getting involved in global trade, LO 3-2. Explain the importance of importing and exporting, and understand key terms used in global business. Job seekers interested in working in global business often think they are limited to major companies like Boeing, Caterpillar, or IBM, which have large multinational accounts. However, there is also global job potential in small businesses. In the United States, only about 3% of small businesses export, yet they account for about a quarter of the total U.S. exports. With the support of the U.S. Department of Commerce, U.S. small business exporting has increased significantly, but not quite to the participation level many would like. Getting started globally is often a matter of observing, being determined, and taking risks. A classic story illustrates this point. Several years ago, a U.S. traveler in an African country noticed there was no ice available for drinks or for keeping foods fresh. Research showed there was no ice factory for hundreds of miles, yet the market seemed huge. The traveler returned to the United States, found some investors, and returned to Africa to build an ice-making plant. The job was tough. Much negotiation was necessary with local authorities, much of which was done by local citizens and business people who knew the system. But the plant was eventually built, and this forward-thinking entrepreneur gained a considerable return on their idea, while the people gained a needed product. Today, ice factories exist throughout Africa. Page 60. Importing goods and services. Students attending colleges and universities or traveling abroad often notice that some products widely available in their countries are unavailable or more expensive elsewhere. By working with producers in their native countries, finding some startup financing, and putting in long hours of hard work, many have become major importers while still in school. Although Funko's Pop line of toys aren't very lifelike, that hasn't stopped these big-headed figurines from becoming a global sensation. Funko's toys usually take on the appearance of famous fictional characters or pop culture icons, giving them widespread appeal to collectors around the world. As a result, Funko earns more than $1 billion a year. As a result, Funko earns more than $1 billion in annual revenue. Does a career in the global collectibles market seem appealing to you? Howard Schultz, Chair Emeritus of Starbucks, found his opportunity while traveling in Milan, Italy. Schultz was enthralled with the ambience, the aroma, and especially the sense of community in the Italian neighborhood coffee and espresso bars that stretched across the country. He felt such gathering places would be great in the United States. Schultz bought the original Starbucks coffee shop in Seattle and transformed it according to his vision. Americans soon became aware of what a grand latte was all about. In 2018, 35 years after his trip to Italy, Schultz realized his dream of opening a Starbucks in Italy when the company opened its first store in Milan. Exporting goods and services. Who would think U.S. beers would be popular in Germany? Home of the first state beer purity, law called the Reinheitsgebot, and maker of so many classic beers. Well, some of Germany's most famous beer halls and store shelves offer U.S. beers like Samuel Adams, Boston Lager, Sierra Nevada, even collaborated with Germany's Bitburger Brewery to produce its Oktoberfest beer. Anheuser-Busch InBev, brewer of Budweiser, has operations in nearly 50 countries and has breweries in Europe, Africa, Brazil, and China. If this surprises you, imagine selling sand in the Middle East. Pool owners in Abu Dhabi purchase a special kind of sand used in swimming pool filters that sells well there. The fact is, you can sell just about any good or service used in the United States to other countries, and sometimes the competition is not nearly as intense as it is at home. For example, you can sell snowplows to Saudi Arabians who use them to clear sand off their driveways. Social media has opened up tremendous opportunities in global markets. German-owned Adidas is the second largest footwear company in the world. To expand its reach globally, Adidas uses social media platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook to connect with consumers by utilizing celebrities such as pop star Selena Gomez and soccer superstar Lionel Messi to promote its products. The connecting through social media box illustrates how this social media strategy is vital to companies' global success. Exporting can provide a terrific boost to the U.S. economy. See Fred Bergsten, Director Emeritus of the Peterson Institute for International Economics, has stated that the U.S. economy is $1 trillion a year richer because of its integration within the world economy. He also estimates that every $1 billion in additional U.S. exports generates over 7,000 jobs at home. Overall exports represent about 11%. Overall exports represent about 11% of U.S. GDP and account for 9 million jobs. But selling in global markets and adapting products to global customers are by no means easy tasks. We discuss key forces that affect global trading later in the chapter. If you are interested in learning more about exporting, go to the International Trade Administration, trade.gov, and click on Learn How to Export. More advice is available at websites such as those sponsored by the U.S. Department of Commerce, doc.gov, the Bureau of Export Analysis, bea.gov, the Small Business Administration, sba.gov, and the Small Business Exporters Association, sbea.gov. Measuring global trade. In measuring global trade, nations rely on two key indicators: balance of trade and balance of payments. The balance of trade is the total value of a nation's exports compared to its imports, measured over a particular period. A favorable balance of trade, or trade surplus, occurs when the value of a country's exports exceeds that of its imports. An unfavorable balance of trade, or trade deficit, occurs when the value of a country's exports is less than that of its imports. It's easy to understand why countries prefer to export more than they import. If I sell you $200 worth of goods and buy only $100 worth, I have an extra $100 available to buy other things. However, I'm in an unfavorable position if I buy $200 worth of goods from you and sell you only $100. Page 61. Connecting through social media. It really is a small world after all. It really is a small world after all, thanks to social media. Customers almost anywhere in the world can log into one of many apps and post. Customers almost anywhere in the world can log into one of many apps, and your post can persuade them to check out your website. The result: another potential customer is aware of your brand. Staying competitive in today's global business environment requires companies of all sizes to improve the effectiveness of their social media marketing. Statistics show that more than 4.5 billion internet users around the world spend at least 2.5 hours per day on social apps like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. These platforms allow consumers to discover and share information about brands through word of mouth. Which consulting firm McKinsey and Company claims can influence between 20 and 50% of all purchasing decisions. But in the ever-evolving world of social media, word of mouth needs to extend beyond just the one-on-one recommendations of friends and family. It often is used through the help of influencers and content creators. Influencers and content creators are powerful personalities that have social media followings that range from tens of thousands to millions, giving them enormous marketing power over their legions of followers. Research shows that half of millennial consumers trust content creators for purchasing guidance. Gen Z consumers are even more likely than millennials to follow product recommendations from content creators, with many trusting them more than their friends when it comes to shopping. To reach the enormous number of Gen Z consumers and their more than $360 billion in spending power, savvy brands are spending big to promote their products through famous influencers and content creators. One recent study found that almost 3/4 of companies with 100 or more employees used social media marketing in 2022. Some content creators become so powerful that they alone drive up the demand for many products. For example, makeup artist Sandra Sayers started posting makeup tutorials on YouTube while waiting for her U.S. citizenship following her immigration from Cuba. She now has over 16 million YouTube subscribers and can earn up to $11,000 per sponsored Instagram post, or nearly $9,000 for a TikTok. When she promotes a product, it's quick to sell out on many consumer sites. Creators like these will likely continue to have a major impact on both marketing and product development in the years to come. Sources: Kevin Johnson, The Role of Social Media in International Branding. Small Business, Crone, smallbusiness.crone.com, accessed February 2023. David Chaffee, Global Social Media Statistics Research Summary. Smart Insights, smartinsights.com, January 30th, 2023. Jeff Fromm, As Gen Z's buying power grows, businesses must adapt their marketing. Forbes, July 20th, 2022. Alessandro Carrara, TikTok's highest earning beauty influencers revealed cosmetics business. June 16th, 2022. Stephen Rabimov, The 360-Degree Beauty, Consumer-Informed Cosmetics Trends. Forbes, February 13th, 2023. The balance of payments is the difference between money coming into a country from exports and money leaving the country for imports, plus money flows coming into or leaving a country from other factors such as tourism, foreign aid, military expenditures, and foreign investment. The goal is to have more money flowing into the country than out, a favorable balance of payments. Conversely, an unfavorable balance of payments exists when more money is flowing out of a country than coming in. Since 1975, the United States has bought more goods from other nations than it has sold, and thus has a trade deficit. In 2022, the United States recorded its largest trade deficit ever. Today, the highest trade deficit is with China. Nonetheless, the United States remains one of the world's largest exporting nations, even though it exports a much lower percentage of its products than other countries such as China, Germany, and Japan. Figure 3.3 lists the major trading countries in the world and the leading U.S. trading partners. Figure 3.3 the largest exporting nations in the world and the largest U.S. trading partners. The blue is the world's largest exporting nations. The orange is the top U.S. trading partners. And the green is both. Page 62. Connect. I see it. Need help understanding balance of trade? Visit your Connect ebook to view a video for a brief animated explanation. In supporting free trade, the United States, like other nations, wants to make certain global trade is conducted fairly. In supporting free trade, the United States, like other nations, wants to make certain global trade is conducted fairly. Wants to make sure certain global trade is conducted fairly.
When we look at the balance of trade and balance of payments, we can use the United States in 1970 as an example. Way back in the early 70s, the United States was a manufacturing powerhouse. The U.S. exported more goods out of the country than it imported. In other words, the U.S. enjoyed a trade surplus. But a reduction in global trade barriers and increased competition from other nations created a seismic shift. By the 1980s, the U.S. was importing more goods than it was exporting. It had a trade deficit, which has continued to increase to this day. The difference in value between a country's exports and its imports is the balance of trade. A trade surplus is a favorable balance of trade, whereas a trade deficit is a negative balance of trade. The U.S. is still one of the largest exporting nations in the world, but it exports a much lower percentage of products than a country like China. You've no doubt seen the Made in China imprint on all sorts of items you use every day, from clothing and plastic goods to machinery and electronics. The problem with depending so much on imports is that the resulting trade deficit can lead, over time, to the closure of businesses and the loss of jobs. We've looked at the balance of trade, which is the difference in value between a nation's exports and imports. The balance of trade is part of the balance of payments. The balance of payments is the difference between the flow of money into and out of a country. This includes trade dollars, but also the money a country spends on things like foreign aid, foreign investments, military expenses, and tourism. And that is basically the balance of trade and balance of payments.
In supporting free trade, the United States, like other nations, wants to make sure certain global trade is conducted fairly. To ensure a level playing field, countries prohibit unfair trade practices such as dumping. Dumping is selling products in a foreign country at lower prices than those charged in the producing country. This predatory pricing practice is sometimes used to reduce surplus products in foreign markets or to gain a foothold in a new market. Some governments may even offer financial incentives to certain industries to sell goods in global markets for less than they sell them at home. China and Russia, for example, have been penalized for dumping steel and aluminum in the United States. U.S. laws against dumping are specific and require foreign firms to price their products to include 10% overhead costs plus an 8% profit margin. Now that you understand some of the basic terms used in global business, we can look at different strategies for entering global markets. First, let's assess your understanding so far by doing the test prep. Test prep. What are two of the main arguments favoring the expansion of U.S. businesses into global markets? What is comparative advantage? And what are some examples of this concept at work in the United States? How are a nation's balance of trade and balance of payments determined? What is meant by the term dumping in global trade? Strategies for reaching global markets. Page 63. LO 3-3. Illustrate the strategies used in reaching global markets and explain the role of multinational corporations. Businesses use different strategies to compete in global markets. The key strategies include licensing, exporting, franchising, contract manufacturing, international joint ventures, and strategic alliances, foreign subsidiaries, and foreign direct investment. Each provides different economic opportunities, along with specific commitment and risks. Figure 3.4 places the strategies on a continuum. Figure 3.4 places these strategies on a continuum, showing the amount of commitment, control, risk, and profit potential associated with each strategy. Take some time to look over the information in Figure 3.4 before you continue. Figure 3.4 Strategies for reaching global markets. Licensing, exporting, franchising, contract manufacturing, international joint ventures and strategic alliances, foreign direct investment, INC, foreign subsidiaries, least amount of commitment, control, risk, and profit potential, most. Licensing. A firm, the licensor, may decide to compete in a global market by licensing the right to manufacture its product or use its trademark to a foreign company. The licensee, for a fee, a royalty. A company with an interest in licensing generally sends company representatives to the foreign company to help set up operations. The licensor may also assist or work with a licensee in such areas as distribution, promotion, and consulting. A licensing agreement can benefit a firm in several ways. First, the firm can gain revenues it would not otherwise have generated in its home market. Also, foreign licensees often must purchase startup supplies, materials, and consulting services from the licensing firm. Coca-Cola has entered into global licensing agreements with over 225 licensees that have extended into long-term bottling service contracts that sell over 1.9 billion servings of the company's products each day. Service-based companies are also active in licensing. For example, Tokyo Disneyland, the first Disney theme park opened outside the United States, is operated by Oriental Land Company under a licensing agreement with the Walt Disney Company. In fact, Disney is the largest licensor of consumer products globally, with over $56 billion of licensed products. A final advantage of licensing is that licensors spend little or no money to produce and market their products. These costs come from the licensee's pocket. Therefore, licensees generally work hard to succeed. However, licensors may also experience problems. Often a firm must grant licensing rights to its product for an extended period. It could be 20 years or longer. If a product experiences remarkable growth in the foreign market, the bulk of the revenues belong to the licensee. Perhaps even more threatening is that the licensing firm is actually selling its expertise. If a foreign licensee learns the company's technology or product secrets, it may violate the agreement and begin to produce a similar product on its own. If legal remedies are not available, the licensing firm may lose its trade secrets, not to mention promised royalties. Page 64. Marvel has licensed many companies to make products related to successful film franchises like the Avengers. Do you think Marvel licensed products will maintain their global popularity with new generations of viewers? Exporting. To meet increasing global competition, the U.S. Department of Commerce created Export Assistance Centers, EACs. EACs provide hands-on exporting assistance and trade finance support for small and medium-sized businesses that wish to directly export goods and services. U.S. firms that are still hesitant can engage in indirect exporting through specialists called export trading companies or export management companies that assist in negotiating and establishing trading relationships. An export trading company not only matches buyers and sellers from different countries, but also deals with the foreign custom offices, documentation, and weights and measures conversions to ease the process of entering global markets. It also can assist exporters with warehousing, billing, and insuring. If you are considering a career in global business, export trading companies often provide internships or part-time opportunities for students. Franchising is a contractual franchising is a contractual agreement whereby someone with a good idea for a business sells others the rights to use the business name and sell a product or service in a given territory in a specified manner. Franchising is popular domestically and globally. We discuss it in depth in Chapter 5. Major U.S. franchisors such as Subway, Dunkin', and KFC have many global units operated by foreign franchisees. But global franchising isn't limited to large franchisors. For example, Physique 57, a small high-end boutique fitness center in New York, opened franchises in Abu Dhabi, Bangkok, Manila, and Mumbai. Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory, a Colorado-based producer of premium chocolates, has franchisees in South Korea, the Philippines, and the United Arab Emirates. Where chocolate is considered a gourmet luxury. Foreign franchisors have also experienced success in the U.S. market. Japan's Kumon Math and Reading Centers, Canada's Tim Hortons, and Intercontinental Hotels and Resorts have found long-term success with American consumers. Page 65. Adapting to change. A world of challenges under the golden arches. McDonald's.com. For decades, McDonald's has faced the challenges in the global market and become the undisputed king of global food franchising. Every day, the fast food chain serves 68 million customers at more than 38,000 restaurants located in over 100 countries. So how did McDonald's become such a global powerhouse? It certainly didn't get more. It certainly didn't get there through hamburgers alone, since it first began expanding overseas. The McDonald's has been careful to include regional tastes on its menus along with the usual Big Mac and fries. For instance, Canada, McDonald's has elevated its classic fries by adding cheese curds and gravy to create poutines, a Canadian favorite. During winter months, Japanese customers can order the Grekoro burger, a sandwich that features a fried shrimp and macaroni patty topped with beef sauce. Brazilian locations offer a version of the traditional dish pão de queijo, a baked cheese roll that has been enjoyed in the South American nation for centuries. Customers in the Philippines can even order a fried chicken leg, chicken McDo, with a side of mixed spaghetti, one of the country's most popular McDonald's combos. Other global items to a nation's specific customs and dietary restrictions. In India, McDonald's pays respect to religious sentiments by not including any beef or pork on its menu. This has led to popular items like the Maharaja Mac, which switches out the Big Mac's beef patties for chicken, as well as the McSpicy Paneer, a fried cheese sandwich that has become a major hit with Indian customers. But not every move McDonald's makes on the global stage is a welcomed one. In 2022, after 32 years of operation, McDonald's closed its restaurants in Russia after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. For many Russians, McDonald's opening in 1990 was the first exposure they had experienced to capitalism and American culture. The company knows it will undoubtedly face more challenges in the future as it continues adapting and expanding into the global market. Sources: Natasha Turek, Goodbye American Soft Power, McDonald's exiting Russia after 32 years is the end of an era. CNBC, CNBC.com, accessed February 2023. Gitanjel Punya, strange McDonald's menu items around the world. Deseret News, February 18th, 2023. Special McDonald's menu from around the world. Love Food, lovefood.com. Accessed March 2023. McDonald's, mcdonalds.com. Accessed March 2023. Franchisors have to be careful to adapt their product or service to the countries they serve. Domino's Pizza makes 1 million pizzas a day for the over 19,500 stores it has in 90 countries outside the United States. Unfortunately, the toppings on those pizzas vary from country to country. In India, where the company operates over 1,300 stores, curry is a must. Japanese customers often prefer seafood and fish on their pizza, with squid and sweet mayonnaise pizza a favorite. Dunkin' Brands donut holes might look the same in its 11,700 stores in 43 countries across the globe, but local taste preferences are anything but the same. For example, in the company's donut shops in China, the donut of choice is dried pork and seaweed. South Koreans prefer red bean glazed or black rice donuts. Read the adapting to change box that highlights another global franchise champion, McDonald's. Contract manufacturing. In contract manufacturing, a foreign company produces private label goods to which a domestic company then attaches its own brand name or trademark. For example, contract manufacturers make circuit boards and components used in computers, printers, smartphones, medical products, airplanes, and consumer electronics for companies such as Dell, Apple, and IBM. Foxconn is the world's largest contract manufacturer and makes such well-known products as the Apple iPhone and Microsoft's Xbox Series X. Nike has 600 contract factories across 46 countries that manufacture almost all its footwear and apparel. The medical services industry also makes heavy use of contract manufacturing and is expected to grow to over $360 billion by 2029. Contract manufacturing suffered material shortages and supply chain problems because of the COVID pandemic. This caused many U.S. companies to question its reliability and consider reshoring production. Facilities back to America. General Motors, Intel, and U.S. steel companies. General Motors, Intel, and U.S. Steel are companies that will open new factories in the United States. Page 66. Tired of studying and want a quick snack? How about a piping hot pizza topped with cuttlefish sausage, like this one? International chains serve pies like these around the globe in order to appeal to different tastes. How can franchises ensure their products are appropriate for global markets? Nonetheless, contract manufacturing is expected to continue being a major force in global business. Why? Contract manufacturing enables a company to experiment in a new market without incurring heavy startup costs, such as building a manufacturing plant. If the brand name becomes a success, the company has penetrated a new market with relatively low cost, with relatively low risk. A firm can also use contract manufacturing temporarily to meet an unexpected increase in orders, and of course, labor costs are often very low. Contract manufacturing falls under the broad category of outsourcing, which we will discuss in depth later in this chapter. International joint ventures and strategic alliances. A joint venture is a partnership in which two or more companies, often from different countries, join to undertake a major project. Joint ventures are often mandated by governments such as China as a condition of doing business in their country. For example, NBC Universal opened its first theme park in Beijing, China, through a joint venture with state-owned Beijing Shuan Cultural Tourism Investment. Tickets for the park reportedly sold out within minutes for opening day. The park received the Best Park Award from the Themed Entertainment Association. Joint ventures are developed for many different reasons and can even involve competing companies. General Motors, Volkswagen, and other major car producers have all invested heavily in joint venture factories to ensure the supply of electric vehicle batteries. Joint ventures can also be truly unique. A joint venture called Galvani Bioelectronics involves pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline (GSK) and Verily Life Sciences, formerly Google Life Sciences, to develop bioelectronic medicines to treat chronic diseases. The venture combines GSK's expertise in life sciences with Google's expertise in software and electronics for clinical applications. A classic global joint venture over 20 years ago between the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, UPMC, and the Italian government brought a new medical transplant center to Sicily. The UPMC recently began construction on a 256-bed hospital that will embody lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic. The benefits of international joint ventures are clear. 1. Shared technology and risk. 2. Shared marketing and management expertise. 3. Entry into markets where foreign companies are often not allowed unless goods are produced locally. The drawbacks of joint ventures are not so obvious, but are important. One partner can learn the other's technology and business practices and then use what it has learned to its own advantage. Also, a shared technology may become obsolete, or the joint venture may become too large to be as flexible as needed. Sometimes partners may choose to break ties for various reasons. For example, Fuji and Xerox, a joint venture between Fujifilm and Xerox that existed for 57 years, ended after attempts for a full merger failed. The global market has also fueled the growth of strategic alliances. A strategic alliance is a long-term partnership between two or more companies established to help each company build competitive market advantages. Unlike joint ventures, strategic alliances don't share costs, risks, management, or even profits. Such alliances provide broad access to markets, capital, and technical expertise. Thanks to their flexibility, strategic alliances can effectively link firms from different countries and firms from vastly different sizes. U.S. retail giant Walmart and Japanese e-commerce services firm Rakuten formed a strategic alliance to open Walmart's first e-commerce store in Japan, the Walmart Rakuten Ichiba store. Page 67. Foreign direct investment, FDI, is the buying of permanent property and businesses in foreign nations. The most common form of FDI is a foreign subsidiary, a company owned in a foreign country by another company, called the parent company. The subsidiary operates like a domestic firm with production, distribution, promotion, pricing, and other business functions under the control of the subsidiary's management. The subsidiary also must observe the legal requirements of both the country where the parent firm is located, called the home country, and the foreign country where the subsidiary is located, called the host country. The United States has been and remains a popular spot for foreign direct investment. Global automobile manufacturers like Volkswagen, Toyota, and Honda have spent millions of dollars building facilities in the United States where you consider a Volkswagen made at the company's plant in Chattanooga, Tennessee, to be an American car or a German car. Would you consider a Volkswagen made at the company's plant in Chattanooga, Tennessee, to be an American car or a German car? The primary advantage of a subsidiary is that the company maintains complete control over any technology or expertise it may possess. The major shortcoming is the need to commit funds and technology within foreign boundaries. Should relationships with a host country falter, the firm's assets could be expropriated, taken over by the foreign government. Swiss-based Nestle has many foreign subsidiaries and over 2,000 brands it markets. The consumer products giant spent billions of dollars acquiring foreign subsidiaries such as Gerber Baby Foods, Ralston Purina, Chef America, maker of Hot Pockets, Lean Cuisine, Dreyer's Ice Cream, and Seattle's Best Coffee in the United States, as well as Perrier in France. Nestle employs over 273,000 people in 186 countries and has operations in almost every country in the world. Nestle is a multinational corporation, one that manufactures and markets products in many different countries. It has multinational stock ownership and management. Multinational corporations are typically extremely large corporations like Nestle, but not all large global businesses are multinationals. For example, a corporation could export everything it produces, deriving 100% of its sales and profits globally, and still not be a multinational corporation. Only firms that have manufacturing capacity or some other physical presence in different nations can truly be called multinational. Figure 3.5 lists the 10 largest multinational corporations in the world. Figure 3.5, the largest multinational corporations in the world. Country. 1. Walmart, United States. 2. Amazon, United States. 3. State Grid, China. 4. China National Petroleum, China. 5. Sinopec Group, China. 6. Saudi Aramco, Saudi Arabia. 7. Apple, US. 8. Volkswagen, Germany. 9. China State Construction, China. 10. CVS Health, United States. Source: Fortune.com, accessed February 2023. A major form of foreign direct investment is the use of sovereign wealth funds, SWFs. Investment funds controlled by government holding investment stakes in foreign companies, real estate, and other investments. Norway, with a population of 5 million people, is the world's wealthiest SWF, with assets of over $1.37 trillion. SWFs from the United Arab Emirates, Singapore, and China have purchased interests in many U.S. companies. The size of SWFs, $7 trillion globally, and government ownership have raised some fears they might be used for achieving geopolitical objectives. China's purchase of farmland located near U.S. military bases is an example. Entering global business requires selecting an entry strategy that best fits your business goals. The different strategies we've discussed reflect different levels of ownership, financial commitment, and risk. However, this is just the beginning. You should also be aware of market forces that affect a business's ability to thrive in global markets. After the test prep, we'll discuss them. Page 68. Test prep. What are the advantages to a firm of using licensing as a method of entry in global markets? What are the disadvantages? What services are usually provided by an export trading company? What is the key difference between a joint venture and a strategic alliance? What makes a company a multinational corporation? Forces affecting trading in global markets. LO 3-4. Evaluate the forces that affect trading in global markets. The hurdles to success are higher and more complex in global markets than in domestic markets. Such hurdles include dealing with differences in socio-cultural forces, economic and financial forces, legal and regulatory forces, and physical and environmental forces. Let's analyze each of these market forces to see how they challenge even the most established and experienced global businesses. Sociocultural forces. The word culture refers to the set of values, beliefs, rules, and institutions held by a specific group of people. Culture can include social structures, religion, manners, and customs, values and attitudes, language, and personal communication. If you hope to get involved in global trade, it's critical to be aware of the cultural differences among nations. Unfortunately, while the United States is a multicultural nation, U.S. business people are often accused of ethnocentricity, an attitude that your own culture is superior to other cultures. In contrast, many foreign companies are very good at adapting to U.S. culture. Think how effectively German, Japanese, and Korean car makers have adapted to U.S. drivers' wants and needs. German discount grocery chain Aldi continues expanding in the United States and now has over 2,100 locations with plans to hire more than 20,000 workers in 2022. Lidl, another German discount grocery chain, entered the United States in 2017 and has approximately 150 U.S. locations with plans for further growth. Despite worldwide acceptance, the United States has not conformed to the metric system of measurement. Liberia and Myanmar are the only other nations that do not use the metric system. Let's look at other hurdles U.S. businesses face in adapting to social and cultural differences in global markets. Page 69. Religion is an important part of any society's culture and globally can have a significant impact on business operations. In order to be successful, it is imperative global companies are aware of religious implications in making business decisions. For example, Islam prohibits eating pork, and Hindus do not consume beef. Such religious restrictions are very important to companies like Domino's and Pizza Hut to follow, especially in countries such as Saudi Arabia and India. McDonald's learned the importance of respecting religious beliefs over 25 years ago at the World Cup. The company reprinted the flag of Saudi Arabia on its food bags. Muslims were offended with the flag on its packaging because the flag's design contained the Muslim Shahada, the Muslim Declaration of Faith. Offended Muslims believed their holy writ should never be wadded up and thrown away. Years later, at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, Anheuser-Busch InBev was informed there would be no beer sales inside stadiums 2 days before the competition started due to strict alcohol restrictions. The company had paid $75 million to be the official beer supplier during the tournament. A valuable lesson from these experiences is understanding religious implications in the global market is critical. In a similar classic story, a U.S. manager in Islamic Pakistan toured a new plant under his control. While the plant was in full operation, he went to his office to make some preliminary production forecasts. Suddenly, all the machinery in the plant stopped. The manager rushed out, suspecting a power failure, only to find his production workers on their prayer rugs. Upon learning that Muslims are required to pray 5 times a day, he returned to his office and lowered his production estimates. Understanding sociocultural differences is also important in managing employees. In some Latin American countries, workers believe managers are in positions of authority to make decisions concerning the well-being of the workers under their control. Consider the U.S. manager working in Peru who was unaware of this cultural characteristic and believed workers should participate in managerial functions. The manager was convinced they could motivate workers to higher levels of productivity by instituting a more democratic decision-making style. Workers began quitting in droves. When asked why, they said the new manager did not know the job and was asking the workers what to do. All stated they wanted to find new jobs since this company was doomed due to its incompetent management. Even today, many U.S. companies still fail to think globally, not understanding that something like the color used in packaging can have different meanings in different cultures. A sound philosophy is never assume what works in one country will work in another. Intel, Nike, IBM, Apple, KFC, and Walmart have developed brand names with widespread global appeal and recognition. But even they often face difficulties. To get an idea of problems companies have faced with translations of advertising globally, take a look at Figure 3.6. Figure 3.6. Oops, did we say that? A global marketing strategy can be very difficult to implement. Look at the problems these well-known companies encountered in global markets. KFC's patented slogan, "Finger licking good," was understood in Japanese as "bite your fingers off." PepsiCo attempted a Chinese translation of "come alive." You're in the Pepsi generation. That read to Chinese customers as Pepsi brings your ancestors back from the dead. Coors Brewing Company put its slogan, "Turn it loose," into Spanish and found it translated as "suffer from diarrhea." Purdue Chicken used the slogan, "It takes a strong man to make a tender chicken," which was interpreted in Spanish as "it takes an aroused man to make a chicken affectionate." On the other side of the translation glitch, Electrolux, a Scandinavian vacuum manufacturer, tried to sell its products in the US market with the slogan, "Nothing sucks like an Electrolux." Economic and financial forces. Economic differences can muddy the water in the global markets. In Monaco, annual per capita income is over $170,000, the highest in the world. In 2022, economically strapped Burundi reported the lowest per capita income, barely over $308. It's difficult for us to imagine buying chewing gum by the stick, yet this behavior is commonplace in economically depressed nations like Haiti or Somalia, where customers can afford only small quantities. You might suspect with over 1.4 billion potential customers, India would be the largest market for Coca-Cola. In fact, India ranks 5th in global sales because Indians consume only 5% of what the United States consumes due to low per capita income. The same is true in the booming beauty and personal care market in India, where consumers buy in very small sample size quantities due to low incomes. Page 70. Financially, Mexicans shop with pesos, Chinese with yuan or yen, Chinese with yen, also known as renminbi, South Koreans with won, Japanese with yen, and U.S. consumers with dollars. Among currencies, globally, the U.S. dollar is considered a dominant and stable currency. However, it doesn't always retain the same market value. In a global transaction today, a dollar may be exchanged for 8 pesos. Tomorrow, you may get 7. The exchange rate is the value of one's nation's currency relative to the currencies of other countries. Changes in a nation's exchange rates have effects in global markets. A high value of the dollar means a dollar is trading for more foreign currency than previously. Therefore, foreign products become cheaper because it takes fewer dollars to buy them. However, U.S. produced goods become more expensive because of the dollar's high value. Conversely, a low value of the dollar means a dollar is traded for less foreign currency. Foreign goods become more expensive because it takes more dollars to buy them. But U.S. goods become cheaper to foreign buyers because it takes less foreign currency to buy them. Global financial markets operate under a system called floating exchange rates, which means that currencies float in value according to the supply and demand for them in the global market for currency. This supply and demand is created by global currency traders who develop a market for a nation's currency based on the country's perceived trade and investment potential. Changes in currency values can cause many problems globally. For instance, labor costs for multinational corporations like Unilever, Nestle, and Nike can vary considerably as currency values shift, causing them to sometimes juggle production from one country to another. The same is true for medium-sized companies like H.B. Fuller, a global industrial adhesives provider from St. Paul, Minnesota, which has 6,400 employees in 43 countries. Like its larger counterparts, H.B. Fuller uses currency fluctuations to its advantage in dealing with its global markets. Currency valuation problems can be especially harsh on global economies. At times, a nation's government will intervene and readjust the value of its currency, often to increase the export potential of its products. Devaluation lowers the value of a nation's currency relative to other currencies. The Turkish lira has lost over 400% of its value since 2008 due to various reasons, including geopolitical and economic issues, sometimes due to a nation's weak currency. The only way to trade is bartering, the exchange of merchandise or service for service with no money traded. Page 71. When the dollar is up, foreign goods and travel are a bargain for U.S. consumers. When the dollar trades for less, foreign currency, however, tourists from abroad often flock to U.S. cities to enjoy relatively cheaper vacations and shopping trips. Do U.S. exporters profit more when the dollar is up or when it is down? Counter trading is a complex form of bartering in which several countries each trade goods or services for other goods or services. Let's say a less developed country such as Jamaica wants to buy vehicles from Ford Motor Company in exchange for bauxite, a mineral compound that is a source of aluminum ore. Ford does not need Jamaican bauxite, but it does need compressors. In a counter trade, Ford may trade vehicles to Jamaica, which trades bauxite to another country, say India, which exchanges compressors with Ford. All three parties benefit and avoid some of the financial problems and currency constraints in global markets. Estimates are that counter trading accounts for over 20% of all global exchanges, especially with less developed countries. Legal and regulatory forces in any economy, the conduct and the direction of business are firmly tied to the legal and regulatory environment. In global markets, no central system of law exists, so different systems of laws and regulations may apply in different places. This makes conducting global business difficult as business people navigate a sea of laws and regulations that are often inconsistent. Antitrust rules, labor relations, patents, copyrights, trade practices, taxes, product liability, child labor, prison labor, and other issues are governed differently country by country. The Making Ethical Decisions box raises ethical questions about selling products in a global market with a different legal and regulatory system. U.S. businesses must follow U.S. laws and regulations in conducting business globally. For example, the U.S. and other countries' sanctions on Russia after it invaded Ukraine in 2022, restricted imports from the country, since the two countries control nearly a third of what since the two countries control nearly a third of the wheat supplied around the world, and Russia alone controls a third of the potash production, a main ingredient in fertilizer. The cost of food spiked higher across the globe. Legislation such as the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act of 1978 can create competitive disadvantages. This law prohibits questionable or dubious payments to foreign officials to secure business contracts. That runs contrary to practices in some countries, generally less developed countries, where corporate or government bribery is not merely acceptable but perhaps the only way to secure a lucrative contract. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, and Transparency International have led a global effort to fight corruption and bribery in global business, with limited success. Figure 3.7 shows a partial list of countries where bribery or other unethical business practices are most common. Page 72, Figure 3.7. Countries rated highest on corrupt business. 1. Somalia. 2. Syria. 3. South Sudan. 4. Venezuela. 5. Yemen. 6. Libya. 7. North Korea. 8. Haiti. 9. Equatorial Guinea. 10. Burundi. Source: Transparency International 2023. Making ethical decisions, sweet dreams or nightmares. As the top manager of Sweet Dreams, a maker of children's sleepwear, you received notification from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, CPSC, that the fabric you use in your nightgowns has been deemed unsafe. The commission conducted a study of the product after a child was seriously burned while wearing a nightgown that burst into flames when they ventured too close to a gas stove. The CPSC ruled the material used did not have sufficient flame retardant capabilities to meet U.S. standards. Your company was instructed to immediately remove the product from store shelves and issue a product recall. This is a tough blow for your company since the nightgowns are popular and sell well in the market. Plus, you have a large supply of the product in your warehouse that now is just taking up space. A big financial loss for the company is likely. Your sales manager reminds you that many countries do not have such strict product safety laws as the United States. They suggest the product could be exported to a country. They suggest the product could be exported to a country with less stringent product safety rules. Exporting the product to another country would solve your inventory and profit concerns, but you would wonder about if it's right to send a product deemed unsafe in the United States to children in another market. What are the consequences of each alternative? What will you do? The cooperation and sponsorship of local business people in a foreign market can help a company penetrate the market and deal with laws, regulations, and bureaucratic barriers in their country. Physical and environmental forces. Physical and environmental forces certainly affect a company's ability to conduct global business. Some less developed countries have such primitive transportation and storage systems that international distribution is ineffective, if not impossible, especially for perishable food. Add unclean water, the lack of effective sewer systems, and unacceptable air pollution levels, and you can see the intensity of the problem. Technological differences also influence the features and feasibility of exportable products. For example, residential electrical systems in many less developed countries do not match those of U.S. homes in kind or capacity. Computer and internet use in many less developed countries has improved due to the adoption of cloud services, but still lags behind more developed nations due to consumers' inability to afford even low-priced laptops. Facts like these make for a tough environment for business in general and for e-commerce in particular. Economic development is also severely impacted. After the test prep, we'll explore how another force, trade protectionism, affects global business. Page 73, Test Prep. What are 4 major hurdles to successful global trade? What does ethnocentricity mean, and how can it affect global success? How would a low value of the dollar affect U.S. exports? What does the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act prohibit? Trade protectionism, LO 3-5. Debate the advantages and disadvantages of trade protectionism. As we discussed in the previous section, socio-cultural, economic and financial, legal and regulatory, and physical and environmental forces are all challenges to global trade. What is often a much greater barrier to global trade, however, is trade protectionism. What is often a much greater barrier to global trade, however, is trade protectionism. Trade protectionism is the use of government regulations to limit the import of goods and services. Advocates of protectionism believe it allows domestic producers to survive and grow, producing more jobs. Other countries use protectionist measures because they are wary of foreign competition in general. To understand how protectionism affects global business, let's briefly review a little bit of global economic history. Business, economics, and politics have always been closely linked. Economics was once referred to as political economy, indicating the close ties between politics, government, and economics. In the 17th and 18th centuries, business people and government leaders endorsed an economic policy called mercantilism. The idea was for a nation to sell more goods to other nations than it bought from them. That is, to have a favorable balance of trade. According to mercantilists, this resulted and a flow of money to the country that sold the most globally. The philosophy led governments to implement tariffs, taxes, and imports, making imported goods more expensive to buy. There are two kinds of tariffs: protective and revenue. Protective tariffs, import taxes, raise the retail price of imported products so that domestic goods are more competitively priced. These tariffs are meant to save jobs for domestic workers and keep industries, especially infant industries that have companies in the early stages of growth, from closing down because of foreign competition. Revenue tariffs are designed to raise money for the government. For example, tariffs on imports coming into the United States are collected by U.S. Customs and Border Protection on behalf of the U.S. Commerce Department. Keep in mind that this tax is paid by the importer. This means that if the United States imposes a tariff on foreign goods, the U.S. companies that buy the foreign goods must pay the tariff bill. Some workers believe that too many U.S. jobs have been lost due to the growing number of imported products. Should governments protect their industries by placing tariffs on imported products? Why or why not? An import quota limits the number of products in certain categories a nation can import. The United States has import quotas on a number of products, including sugar and beef, to protect U.S. companies and preserve jobs. The United States also prohibits the export of specific products. Anti-terrorism laws and the U.S. Export Administration Act of 1979 prohibit exporting goods such as high-tech weapons that could endanger national security. An embargo is a complete ban on the import or export of a certain product, or the stopping of all trade with a particular country. The Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022 led the United States and many European nations to ban the import or export of products from Russia because of the war. The United States has imposed embargoes on Iran, Iran, Syria, North Korea, Russia, and Cuba. The embargo against Cuba has existed since 1962. In 2016, some trade restrictions were lifted and diplomatic relations restored. However, in 2017, diplomatic relations soared and restrictions again were put in place where they remain. Page 74. Some non-tariff barriers are not as specific or formal as tariffs, import quotas, and embargoes, but can be just as detrimental to free trade. For example, India imposes a number of restrictive standards like import licensing, burdensome product testing requirements, and lengthy customs procedures that inhibit the sale of imported products. China omits many American-made products from its government catalogs that specify what products may be purchased by its huge government sector. Other trade barriers detail exactly how a product must be sold in a country or may insist on local content requirements that require that some part of a product be produced domestically. Would-be exporters might view such trade barriers as good reasons to avoid global trade, but overcoming constraints creates business opportunities. Next, we'll look at organizations and agreements that attempt to eliminate these trade barriers. The World Trade Organization. In 1948, government leaders from 23 nations formed the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT. a global forum for reducing trade restrictions on goods, services, ideas, and cultural programs. In 1986, the Uruguay round of the GATT convened to renegotiate trade agreements. After 8 years of meetings, 124 nations voted to lower tariffs on average of 38% worldwide and to expand new trade rules to areas such as agriculture, services, and the protection of patents. The Uruguay Round also established the World Trade Organization, WTO, to mediate trade disputes among nations. The WTO, headquartered in Geneva, is an independent entity of 164 member nations, whose purpose is to oversee cross-border trade issues and global business practices. Trade disputes are presented by member nations, and decisions are expected to be made within a year rather than languishing for years as in the past. Member nations can appeal a decision. The WTO has not solved global trade problems. In fact, the WTO has not reached any significant trade accord since the Doha round of negotiations ended in 2015. Since its inception, a wide gap has persisted between less developed nations, 80% of the WTO membership, and more developed nations like the United States. Many worry that WTO authority and legitimacy could be crumbling. Many countries, including the United States, have ignored the WTO and implemented export controls, tariffs, and subsidies. Common markets. A common market, also called a trading bloc, is a regional group of countries with a common external tariff, no internal tariffs, and coordinated laws to facilitate exchange among members. The European Union, EU, Mercosur, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, Economic Community, and the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, are common markets. The EU began in the late 1950s as an alliance of 6 trading partners, then known as the Common Market and later the European Economic Community. Today, it is a group of 27 nations, see Figure 3.8, with a combined population of over 447 million and a GDP of 17.01 trillion. Though the EU is represented as a unified body in the WTO, the economies of 5 members, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands, account for the majority of the EU's GDP. Figure 3.8, members of the European Union. Current EU members are highlighted in yellow. Countries that have applied for membership are in orange. Page 75. In 1999, the EU took a significant step by adopting the euro as a common currency. The euro helped EU businesses save billions by eliminating currency conversions. 19 member nations now use the euro as their common currency. In 2016, the UK, United Kingdom, voted to leave the EU, an action called Brexit, a combination of the words Britain and exit. The UK became the first nation to withdraw from the EU when it formally left in 2020. This isn't the problem the EU has confronted. Financial difficulties in member nations, Italy, Portugal, Spain, and especially Greece, required financial bailout assistance. Continuing immigration issues and containing the COVID-19 pandemic also challenged the EU. Going forward, the EU faces many other major issues, including the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Still, leading members consider economic integration among member nations as the best strategy to compete globally against major global competitors like the United States and China. Mercosur unites Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, and associate members Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Suriname in a trading bloc that encompasses almost 553 million people. Venezuela was a former member but was suspended from the Mercosur in 2016. The EU and Mercosur finalized a trade agreement in 2019 that would create one of the largest free trade agreements in the world. The trade deal, however, has not been ratified. France and other members refuse to ratify the agreement due to environmental concerns. On January 31st, 2020, the United Kingdom officially left the European Union after voting to withdraw from the economic bloc 4 years earlier. This monumental departure ended more than 40 years of economic and political cooperation between the UK and the continent. Do you think it was a good decision for the UK to leave the EU? The new Asia-Pacific Trade Agreement, called the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, will eventually eliminate more than 90% of tariffs among 16 member countries. China, Japan, and Australia have signed on to the new agreement. U.S. trade analysts fear the new trade pact will enhance China's influence on the region. Many believe the United States needs to rethink its strategy in the region. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, is the largest free trade area in the world in terms of member nations. The AFCFTA brings together all 55 member states of the African Union with a market of over 1.2 billion people, a growing middle class, and a combined GDP of $3.4 trillion. Page 76. The United States, Mexico, Canada Agreement, USMCA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, created a free trade area among the United States, Canada, and Mexico. The agreement was widely controversial and often criticized since its passage in 1993. NAFTA's key objectives were to 1. Eliminate trade barriers and facilitate cross-border movement of goods and services. 2. Promote conditions of fair competition. 3. Increase investment opportunities. 4. Provide effective protection and enforcement of intellectual property rights, patents, and copyrights. 5. Establish a framework for further regional trade cooperation. And 6. Improve working conditions in North America, particularly in Mexico. Under NAFTA, attempts to boost job growth, fight poverty, improve environmental controls, and close the wage gap between Mexico and the United States largely failed. Illegal immigration also remained a major problem between the two nations. In 2018, leaders from the United States, Mexico, and Canada signed a new trade deal that revised NAFTA, known as the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. The new agreement was ratified in 2020. The USMCA attempts to remedy these past shortcomings and create more balanced and reciprocal trade in the following areas. 1. Creating a more level playing field for U.S. workers, including improved rules for automobiles, trucks, and other products. 2. Providing benefits to American farmers, ranchers, and other agribusiness by modernizing and strengthening food and agricultural trade in North America. 3. Supporting a modern economy through new protections for U.S. intellectual property and opportunities for trade in U.S. services. And 4. Introducing new rules covering digital trade, anti-corruption, and good regulatory practices. It also includes a chapter devoted to ensuring that small and medium-sized enterprises benefit from the agreement. Time will tell if USMCA achieves these lofty goals. Central American Free Trade Agreements. The United States has remained committed to free trade, for example, CAFTA. The Central American Free Trade Agreement created a free trade zone with Costa Rica, the Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua that has worked well since being signed in 2016. The United States also has free trade agreements with 12 other nations, including South Korea and Australia. Common markets and free trade areas will be debated far into the future. While some economists resoundingly praise such efforts, others are concerned the world could divide into major trading blocs that will exclude poor and less developed nations. There is also a fear that protectionist policies are growing. After the test prep, we'll look at the future of global trade and address the issue of outsourcing. Test prep. What are the advantages and disadvantages of trade protectionism and of tariffs? What is the primary purpose of the WTO? What is the key objective of a common market like the European Union? The Future of Global Trade, page 77. LO 3-6. Discuss the changing landscape of the global market and the issue of offshore outsourcing. Global trade opportunities grow more interesting and more challenging each day. After all, over 8 billion potential customers are attractive. However, a global pandemic, terrorism, nuclear proliferation, rogue states, income inequality, trade wars, cyber terrorism, war, and other issues cast a dark shadow on global markets. Let's conclude this chapter by looking at issues certain to influence global markets and perhaps your business career. With more than 1.4 billion people, incredible exporting prowess, manufacturing power, and growing technological capabilities, China has transformed the world economic map. China is the world's exporter and the second largest economy. Not long ago, foreign and direct investment in China was considered risky and not worth the risk. In 2022, China attracted $189 billion in foreign direct investment. Some economists predict China could overtake the United States as the world's largest economy in the late 2020s. Many viewed China as a free trader's dream, where global investment and entrepreneurship would lead to wealth. However, concerns about China's one-party political system, human rights abuses, currency issues, increasing urban population growth, trade restrictions, military buildup, and an aging population have raised serious concerns. China's underground economy also still generates significant product piracy and counterfeiting. With the global economy continuing to be intensely competitive, China will be a key driver of the world economy and a formidable competitor of the United States, the EU, and Japan. While China attracts most of the attention in Asia, India's population of over 1.4 billion presents a tremendous opportunity and challenges. With nearly 47% of its population under the age of 25. India's working age population will continue to grow while the United States, China, and the EU face declining and aging populations. In fact, India surpassed China as the world's most populated country in 2023. India has seen strong growth in information technology and biotechnology, and its pharmaceutical business is expected to grow to $65 billion in 2024. The government is trying to transform the country's image as a difficult place to do business, but complex trade laws, an inflexible bureaucracy, and limited manufacturing capacity are continuing challenges. Economists see better times for India, and some predict India could surpass Germany and Japan to become the world's third largest economy by 2020 to 2029. China's economy is booming, and a highly educated middle class with money to spend is emerging, especially in the cities. Many observers believe China will continue its growth and play a major role in the global economy. Are U.S. firms prepared to compete? Page 78. Many projected Russia would be a wealthy global economy by 2025. Unfortunately, Russia's economy slowed when world oil prices suffered a decline. This forced the government to admit that growth prospects for its economy were not strong. For the next 2 decades, to complicate matters, Russia's invasion of Ukraine caused the United States and major European economies to reduce or stop trade with Russia completely, further stalling its economy. Unfortunately, Russia is continuously plagued by political, currency, and social problems and is considered by Transparency International as one of the world's most corrupt economies. Brazil is the largest economy in South America and the 7th largest economy in the world, with well-developed agriculture, mining, manufacturing, and service sectors. Along with Russia, Brazil was expected to be a major force in the global market as a key supplier of raw materials. Unfortunately, the past several years have been difficult for Brazil's economy, with widespread political corruption, inflation, and slow growth. The COVID-19 pandemic also severely impacted Brazil's economy in the early 2020s. Some hoped the election of a new president in 2022 could move things forward. Still, its consumer market is over 200 million people, remains a prime target for major exporters like the United States and China. Growing areas of opportunity include the less developed nations of Asia. Today, South Korea and Vietnam rank in the top 10 in terms of exports to the United States. Trade with Asian countries, including Indonesia and Thailand, have also increased significantly due to U.S. trade conflicts with China. The potential of these nations has not gone unnoticed among competing global producers. Africa has only begun to emerge as a center for global economic growth, with East Africa expected to be the major center of growth. As you can see, business today is truly global, and your role in it is up to you. The challenge of offshore outsourcing. Offshore outsourcing is the process whereby one firm contracts with other companies abroad to do some or all of its functions. In the United States, companies have outsourced payroll functions, accounting, and many manufacturing operations for many years. However, the shift to primarily low-wage global markets has remained a major issue in the United States. Take a look at the pros and cons of offshore outsourcing in Figure 3.9. Figure 3.9, the pros and cons of offshore outsourcing. Pros: less strategic tasks can be outsourced globally so that companies can focus on areas in which they can excel and grow. Outsourced work allows companies to create efficiencies that in fact let them hire more workers. Consumers benefit from lower prices generated by effective use of global resources, and less developed nations grow, thus fueling global economic growth. Cons: jobs may be lost permanently and wages fall due to low-cost competition offshore. Offshore outsourcing may reduce product quality and can therefore cause permanent damage to a company's reputation. Communication among company members, with suppliers, and with customers becomes more difficult. As lower-level manufacturing became more simplified, U.S. companies such as Levi Strauss, Apple, and Nike outsourced manufacturing offshore. IBM has more employees in India than in the United States. We have moved beyond just the outsourcing of manufactured goods to the second wave of offshore outsourcing, shifting from strict product assembly to design and architecture. Increasing numbers of skilled, educated, middle-income workers in service sector jobs that require specific training such as accounting, law, finance, risk management, healthcare, and information technology have seen their jobs outsourced offshore. Eastern Europe, India, China, and other emerging Asian nations are the most popular locations for offshore outsourcing. Page 79. Loss of jobs through offshore outsourcing remains a major concern. However, it's not the only concern. Nations such as China have a spotty safety record in manufacturing toys, food, pet food, and drugs. Some medical providers have shifted employee surgical procedures to nations such as India to save costs. Additionally, the COVID-19 pandemic caused significant supply chain disruptions throughout the world, causing companies to question the benefits of offshore outsourcing. Many companies have begun reshoring, returning production and manufacturing back to the United States. In 2022, U.S. companies brought 350,000 jobs back to the United States. Apple, Intel, and General Motors are building new factories in the United States. As technical talent continues to grow around the world and supply chains get back to normal functions, offshore outsourcing will continue to be a controversial topic. To stay competitive, education and training will be critical for U.S. workers to preserve the skill premium and technology advantages they possess today and to stay ahead in the future. Globalization and your future. Whether you aspire to be an entrepreneur, a manager, or some other type of business leader, think globally in planning your career. By studying foreign languages, learning about foreign cultures, and taking business courses, including a global business course, you can develop a global perspective on your future. As you progress through this text, Keep two things in mind: globalization is real, and economic competition promises to intensify. Also, keep in mind that global market potential does not belong only to large multinational corporations. Small and medium sized businesses have a world of opportunity in front of them. In fact, these firms are often better prepared to leap into global markets and react quickly to opportunities than are large businesses. Finally, don't forget the potential of franchising, which we examine in more detail in Chapter 5. Test prep. What are the major threats to doing business in global markets? What key challenges must China face before becoming the major global economic leader? What are the primary concerns associated with offshore outsourcing? Summary LO 3-1. Discuss the importance of the global market and the roles of comparative advantage and absolute advantage in global trade. Why should nations trade with other nations? 1. No country is self-sufficient. 2. Other countries need products that prosperous countries produce. And 3. Natural resources and technological skills are not distributed evenly around the world. What is the theory of comparative advantage? The theory of comparative advantage contends that a country should make and then sell those products it produces most efficiently, but buy or trade for those it cannot produce as efficiently. What is absolute advantage? Absolute advantage exists if a country produces a specific product more efficiently than any other country. There are a few examples of absolute advantage in the global market today. Page 80. LO 3-2. Explain the importance of importing and exporting and understand key terms used in global business. What kinds of products can be imported and exported? Though it is not necessarily easy, just about any product can be imported or exported. What terms are important in understanding world trade? Exporting is selling products to other countries. Importing is buying products from other countries. The balance of trade is the relationship of exports to imports. The balance of payments is the balance of trade plus other money flows such as tourism and foreign aid. Dumping is selling products for less in a foreign country than in your own country. See the key terms list after this summary to be sure you know the other important terms. LO 3-3. Illustrate the strategies used in reaching global markets and explain the role of multinational corporations. What are some ways in which a company can engage in global business? Ways of entering global trade include licensing, exporting, franchising, contract manufacturing, joint ventures and strategic alliances, foreign subsidiaries, and direct foreign investment. How do multinational corporations differ from other companies that participate in global business? Unlike companies that only export or import, multinational corporations also have manufacturing facilities or other physical presence in global markets. LO 3-4. Evaluate the forces that affect trading in global markets. What are some of the forces that can discourage participation in global business? Potential stumbling blocks to global trade include socio-cultural forces, economic and financial forces, legal and regulatory forces, and physical and environmental forces. LO 3-5. Debate the advantages and disadvantages of trade protectionism. What is trade protectionism? Trade protectionism is the use of government regulations to limit the import of goods and services. Advocates believe it allows domestic producers to grow, producing more jobs. The key tools of protectionism are tariffs, import quotas, and embargoes. What are tariffs? Tariffs are taxes on foreign products. Protective tariffs raise the price of foreign products and protect domestic industries. Revenue tariffs raise money for the government. What is an embargo? An embargo prohibits the importing or exporting of certain products to a particular country. Is trade protectionism good for domestic producers? That is debatable. Trade protectionism offers pluses and minuses. Why do governments continue such practices? The theory of mercantilism started the practice of trade protectionism, and it has persisted through a weaker form ever since. Page 81, LO 3-6, discuss the changing landscape of the global market and the issue of offshore outsourcing. What is offshore outsourcing? Why is it a major concern for the future? Outsourcing is the purchase of goods and services from outside a firm rather than providing them from inside the company. Today, many businesses are outsourcing manufacturing and services offshore. Many fear that growing numbers of jobs in the United States could be lost due to offshore outsourcing, and that the quality of products produced could be inferior. Since the COVID-19 pandemic caused distribution and supply chain problems, companies have evaluated the possibility of reshoring, bringing jobs and facilities back to the United States. Key terms: absolute advantage, page 59, balance of payments, page 61, balance of trade, page 60, common market, page 74, comparative advantage theory, page 59, contract manufacturing, page 65, counter trading, page 71, devaluation, page 70, dumping, page 62, embargo, page 73, exchange rate, page 70, exporting, page 58, foreign direct investment, FDI, page 67, foreign subsidiary, page 67, free trade, page 58, general agreement on tariffs and trade, GATT, page 74, importing, page 58, import quota, page 73, joint venture, page 62, joint venture, page 66, licensing, page 63, multinational corporation, page 67, North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, page 76, offshore outsourcing, page 78, sovereign wealth funds, SWFs, page 67, strategic alliance, page 66, tariff, page 73, trade deficit, page 61, trade protectionism, page 73, trade surplus, page 60, United States, Mexico, Canada Agreement, USMCA, page 76, World Trade Organization, WTO. Critical thinking. Critical thinking. About 95% of the world's population lives outside the United States, but many U.S. companies, especially small businesses, still do not engage in global trade. Why not? Do you think more small businesses will participate in global trade in the future? Why or why not? 2. Countries like the United States that have a high standard of living are referred to as more developed nations. Countries with a lower standard of living and quality of life are called less developed countries? What factors often prevent developing nations from becoming industrialized nations? 3. What can businesses do to prevent unexpected problems in dealing with socio-cultural, economic and financial, legal and regulatory, and physical and environmental forces in global markets? 4. How would you justify the use of revenue or protective tariffs in today's global market? The COVID-19 pandemic caused major problems for U.S. companies that outsourced manufacturing to other countries. Some firms are now considering reshoring and bringing production back to the United States. What are the advantages and disadvantages of moving production back to the United States? Putting principles to work. Purpose: to compare the shifting exchange rates of various countries and to predict the effects of such exchange shifts on global trade. Exercise: one of the difficulties of engaging in global trade is the constant shift in exchange rates. How much do exchange rates change over a 30-day period? Research this by choosing 5 currencies. Say the euro, the British pound, the Japanese yen, the Mexican peso, the Saudi Arabian rial, and looking at their exchange rates relative to the US dollar for the past month. The rates are available online at Yahoo finance.yahoo.com/currency-converter. Choose a company and describe what effects the currency shifts you noted might have on this company's trade with each of the countries or areas whose currency you chose. 52. Developing career skills. Key: team, analytic, communication, technology. 1. Find out firsthand the global impact on your life. How many different countries' names appear on the labels in your clothes? How many languages do your classmates speak? List the ethnic restaurants in your community. Are they family-owned or corporate chains? 2. Call, email, or visit a local business that imports foreign goods, perhaps a wine or specialty foods importer. Ask the owner or manager about the business's participation in global trade and compile a list of the advantages and disadvantages they cite. Compare notes with your classmates about their research. 3. Visit 4 or 5 public locations in your community, such as schools, hospitals, city and county buildings, or airports. See how many signs are posted in different languages. Don't forget the restrooms, and look for other multilingual information, such as brochures or handouts. Do any of the locations fly flags from different nations? In what other ways do they recognize the diversity of employees or students? What does your search tell you about your community? What does your search tell you about your community? 4. Suppose Representative I. M. Wright delivers a passionate speech at your college on tariffs. Wright argues tariffs are needed to A. protect our young and struggling industries, B. encourage consumers to buy U.S.-made products because it's patriotic, C. protect U.S. jobs and wages, D. achieve a favorable balance of trade and balance of payments. Agree with all of Representative Wright's points. Evaluate each of Wright's major points and decide whether you consider it valid. Be sure to justify your position. 5. Form an imaginary joint venture with 3 classmates and select a product, service, or idea to market a specific country. Have each team member select a key global market force in that country, sociocultural, economic, and financial, legal and regulatory, or physical and environmental, to research. Have each report their findings. Then, as a group, prepare a short explanation of whether the market is worth pursuing or avoiding. Career exploration. Page 83. If you are interested in pursuing a career in global business, here are a few to consider. Find out about the tasks performed, skills needed, pay and opportunity outlook in these fields in the Occupational Outlook Handbook, OOH, at bls.gov. Customs broker acts as a liaison between the federal government and import and export firms. Handles the logistics of moving products across borders. Translator converts information from one language into another language. Wholesale and manufacturing sales representative sells goods for wholesalers or manufacturers to businesses, government agencies, and other organizations in global markets. Buyer and purchasing agent buys products and services for organizations to use or resell, evaluates suppliers, negotiates contracts, and reviews the quality of products. Video Case 1, McGraw-Hill Connect, Mary Kay spreading beauty around the globe.
Mary Kay is a company that was built by a woman for women, and the origins of the company really are a story of empowerment. Mary Kay Ash herself had a very successful career in direct selling. She was very successful, however, it was always the men that got promoted, and when she got tired of being looked over, she quit that job and decided that she had a vision, the vision of a company that would provide women an unlimited opportunity to earn. That vision became a business plan, and on September 13th, 1963, Mary Kay Inc. was formed. Today, Mary Kay is a leading global beauty brand in more than 40 countries around the world. Over our 56 years of history, the Mary Kay opportunity has enriched the lives of literally millions of women around the world. As a global beauty brand, our goal is to make sure that women feel confident, beautiful, and connected. We do that not only through the products that we sell, but also through the independent beauty consultant, making sure that she has the materials, the information, and advice that she needs to deliver personalized beauty service to her customers. As a global beauty brand, it's important that we understand the preferences in every market. In Asia Pacific, the trends there move exceptionally fast, and it's important that we rely on the Mary Kay business partners in the region to help us stay in touch with what women want. One of the things we've always understood is the importance of skincare in that market. And more recently, we're seeing that the trends are moving very quickly as fashion is changing for the color category. So as we work to support the business around the world, we work very closely with trend experts locally in the Asia Pacific region to make sure that we are developing the products that we know the women in that market want and expect from Mary Kay.
China has a population of 376 million cosmetics users. What Mary Kay was looking for is a product to attract new users and rejuvenate the brand. It needed to be something people buy with impulse for affordable price. With its fancy look, instant gratification, and a competitive price, Pingyang was chosen to be the hook product to attract attention to this established beauty brand.
One of the things that we wanted to do is quickly tap the growing interest in color cosmetics, but do it in a way that would stand out in a very competitive marketplace. The concept for Pink Young really was the combination of wanting to leverage the power of pink, something that is a signature brand color for Mary Kay, and at the same time recognize that there really is a new generation of beauty consumers that are looking for new ways to express themselves. So the combination of pink, our signature color, but also the attitude of being young, fresh, experimental, and expressive came together with the concept of Pink Young. It was definitely a combination of collaboration as well as co-creation, which today is, I think, what a successful brand needs to be able to do.
Pingyang uses the color pink in a bold and daring way to redefine the new generation of girl power in China. Pingyang encouraged women consumers to embrace the essence of feminine beauty, discover the power and the potential of feminine, to illustrate the women's power.
We worked very closely with the Mary Kay China team to understand what key influencers would be looking for in a brand new product launch. So creating the launch plan was, I think, the best of both worlds, leveraging the global resources, but at the same time tapping into some very local trends and key opinion leaders in the local market.
The numbers told us that the concept of being bold is well accepted among women of all age. The new Pink Young color line is helping to generate a new young, fun, and bold brand image for Mary Kay in China.
Mary Kay Ash built a successful career in direct selling, but whenever the opportunity for a promotion came up, she was continuously passed over in favor of other male employees. When she finally had enough of this disparity, she quit her job and took a chance on an idea she had nurtured for years. Her vision involved empowering women to achieve unlimited potential according to their motivation and ability. This dream grew into a business plan, and in 1963, Mary Kay Inc. was born. Today, Mary Kay is the leading global beauty brand in more than 40 countries around the world. Since its founding, the company has enriched the lives of millions of women across the globe, according to Cheryl Adkins Green, Executive Vice President and CMO of Mary Kay. The job of a global beauty brand is to make sure women feel confident, beautiful, and connected with the brand. To accomplish these goals, the company's global team of independent beauty consultants must stay aware of local and regional preferences, along with larger trends in the beauty industry. Mary Kay, in turn, must equip its consultants with the materials, information, and advice needed to deliver the best service to their customers. In the Asia-Pacific region, for example, trends can move exceptionally fast. The insight of local consultants helps the company move quickly to stay on top of these changes in the market. The stakes are high considering that China, the largest market in the region, is home to more than 367 million cosmetics users. Millennials have especially emerged as a buying force, meaning that Mary Kay needed to develop a new product line for this growing segment of buyers. With help from its consultants, the company came up with a brand called Pink Young, which combines the firm's signature color with the attitude of being young, fresh, and experimental. After developing this new line, Mary Kay then faced the challenge of bringing it to market. Once again, the company's independent consultants came through and identified key influencers who could generate a lot of buzz for the product launch. Pink Young has since gone on to enjoy massive success in Asia, showing how important it is for companies to consider the needs of all kinds of global consumers. While Mary Kay is first and foremost a beauty brand built on high-quality products and an established delivery system, the company also clearly understands the need to be flexible when breaking into new markets. Page 84. Thinking it over. 1. What local factors must Mary Kay consider while operating in global markets? 2. Why does Mary Kay carefully research a product's potential before it decides to enter a global market? 3. Why does Mary Kay use local trend experts instead of corporate marketing specialists to develop new products for global markets? Video Case 2, McGraw-Hill Connect. Transparency, International Fights, Global Corruption.
Corruption is an insidious problem that harms not only businesses, but also entire economies, especially in the developing world. Transparency International is the largest coalition devoted to fighting corruption around the world. It was created nearly 30 years ago by former World Bank executive Peter Eigen, who believed corruption actually causes and perpetuates poverty.
He saw how corruption basically eroded some of the impacts of the money and the loans and the aid that the bank had been making, especially in the developing world. Was very frustrated because corruption was not seen as a significant problem.
Transparency International now has over 100 chapters around the world, all with the same goal: to chip away at corruption.
Transparency International defines corruption sort of broadly as the abuse of public authority for private gain. If public officials use their authority to take bribes, that's probably the one that is most well known. There's other ways to misuse your power which would be considered corrupt. If you are using your power to punish opponents or reward friends. In many countries, people steal from public coffers. One of the more sort of notorious recent examples was when the Prime Minister of Malaysia stole about $4.5 billion from a development fund meant for rural Malaysians. And there's hundreds of thousands of Malaysian citizens that lost out on healthcare facilities, the building of roads and bridges and other economic development opportunities. And so it had a real impact for those people living in that country. And that's just one example.
While citizens may lose out on vital infrastructure or services, corruption also takes a toll on a country's overall economy.
Countries that are perceived as largely corrupt lose out on foreign direct investment. By that I mean companies willing to actually set up shop. That means thousands, if not tens of thousands of jobs in that country are lost.
The type of government and power also makes a big difference in the prevalence of corruption. For example, a dictatorship is more likely to have widespread corruption than a democracy.
We do believe that democracy and democratic practices help to mitigate the impacts of corruption and corruption itself.
A central tenet of democracy is transparency, which allows citizens to keep tabs on their government.
Most people in the United States at least take this for granted that, our budgets are online. You can go to usaspending.gov and see every contract, what it's for, whether or not it was finished, what the cost was. who the owners of those companies are, et cetera, et cetera. Also, democratic practice would suggest other things, such as an independent media. That's critical so that you have an independent source looking at government. And then the other key piece, an independent judiciary.
There is no comprehensive method to uncover the scope of corruption present within countries. But Transparency International does publish a very powerful research tool.
Every year, Transparency International produces a corruption perceptions index. We rate about 180 countries on perceptions of corruption.
The CPI is compiled with data from trusted industry experts. Lower scores signal the most corrupt territories, and those with the highest scores are the cleanest.
You will see that countries that are quote-unquote cleaner and rank at the high end of the index have an easier time attracting foreign direct investment. They are often donor countries in world aid. Those at the lower end do suffer from more troubling economies, more difficult conditions for citizens on the ground.
Tools like the CPI are cornerstones in Transparency International's efforts, but the group also advocates for the enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, or FCPA, and the development of similar legislation. The U.S. passed the FCPA in 1977 after revelations that American companies had bribed government officials in foreign countries in an attempt to win lucrative contracts.
The FCPA has clearly had a significant impact. We've gotten a lot of laws passed, and we need to make sure that they're effectively enforced. That's sort of the next, I think, big area for anti-corruption activists to address.
After 3 decades of tireless activism around the globe, Transparency International isn't slowing down. They believe corruption is one of the greatest issues facing our world. However, they have seen progress.
I think we are much better at identifying corruption, and it's being taken more seriously, so you're going to see more stories. And so it is going to appear that it's getting worse, but I do think that, 10 or 15 years, things are going to be better than they are today.
Companies encounter all sorts of challenges when they expand into global markets. Socio-cultural forces, economic and financial circumstances, legal and regulatory environments, and even geographic features can have a major impact on the ways that global companies do business. Top firms must adapt to these conditions in order to make their operations successful. Although, here is one major problem that they cannot easily adjust to: corruption. Corruption is an insidious problem that harms not only businesses, but also entire national economies, with developing markets being especially vulnerable. That's why Transparency International was established 30 years ago by Peter Eigen, a World Bank executive who believes corruption perpetuated poverty, with more than 100 chapters worldwide. Transparency International is the largest global coalition devoted to fighting corruption. The organization defines corruption as the abuse of public authority for private gain. Corruption by public officials can include unethical practices like bribery and the use of governmental power to punish opponents. A notorious example occurred when the Prime Minister of Malaysia stole $4 billion from a development fund set up to help citizens in rural communities. His actions prevented Malaysians from receiving much-needed healthcare facilities, roads, bridges, and economic opportunities. Along with the individual suffering caused by corruption, nations that develop reputations for fraud can damage their economies through the loss of foreign direct investment. A lack of outside capital can lead to job losses and stagnant development, potentially setting a country on a backwards track towards Further immerseration. Dictatorships are more likely to rely on corruption because they lack the popular participation and independent media structures present in most democracies. Transparency International admits there is no foolproof method to uncover the scope of corruption in a country. It does, however, publish a research tool called the Corruption Perception Index, where 180 countries are rated on the perception of corruption. The lower the score on the index, the higher the probability of corrupt practices in that country. The index is used by public officials, international financial institutions, and business leaders to determine whether to risk investing in a country. Transparency International also strongly advocates for the enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, FCPA, which the United States passed in 1977. The FCPA became law in the United States when evidence showed that American companies bribed officials in foreign countries to win business contracts. The FCPA has influenced the passage of strict foreign bribery laws throughout Europe and other countries. It's important to ensure these laws are being effectively enforced. That is why, after 30 years of activism, Transparency International isn't about to slow down. It still believes that corruption is one of the greatest issues facing the world economy. The organization has made significant progress identifying where corrupt practices occur and thrive, giving it an advantage that should help its mission for years to come. Thinking it over. 1. Why is direct foreign investment of major importance for less developed countries? 2. Why are dictatorships more susceptible to corruption than democracies? 3. Do you think organizations like Transparency International are effective at combating corruption? Why or why not? Notes. Page 85, page 86, page 87. Notes. 1. World Atlas, worldatlas.com. Accessed February 2023, U.S. Census Bureau, census.gov. Accessed February 2023, Population, United Nations, UN.org. Accessed February 2023. 2. U.S. Trade in Goods by Country, U.S. Census Bureau, census.gov. Accessed February 2023. 3. Ben Tobin. Costco plans to open 24 stores this year, including 15 throughout the U.S. Insider, insider.com. December 8th, 2022. Costco in China. How the U.S.-based wholesale giant continues to expand in China. Daxu Consulting, daxuconsulting.com. Accessed March 2023. 4. Dan Strumpf. Starbucks plans big China expansion. The Wall Street Journal, September 15th, 2022. Clint Rennie. Starbucks plans about 9,000 outlets by 2025. Reuters, Reuters.com, September 13th, 2022. Starbucks in China. Starbucks, Starbucks.com. Accessed March 2023. 5. Walmart Corporation, corporate.walmart.com. Accessed March 2023. T. Osborne, Walmart, number of stores globally, Statista, statista.com. Accessed March 2023. 6. Major League Baseball International, MLB.com. Accessed January 2023. Opening day rosters feature 275 internationally born players, MLB.com. April 8th, 2022. National Basketball Association, NBA.com. Accessed February 2023. 8. National Football League, NFL.com. Accessed February 2023. NFL announces 5 teams to play home games abroad in 2023. ESPN, ESPN.com/NFL/story. Accessed February 2023. 9. Kartik Krishnaiyer, NBC's Premier League. Coverage after 9 years. A look back. World Soccer Talk, worldsoccertalk.com. Accessed February 2023. 10. Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, USTR.gov. Accessed February 2023. 11. Lauren F. Landsberg, Comparative Advantage, econlib.org. Accessed February 2023. 12. Facts and Data on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council, sbecouncil.org. Accessed January 2022. Edith Lederer, SBA, only 1% of America's small businesses export overseas. Incorporated, inc.com. Accessed January 2022. Small Business Administration, Trade and Export Promotion Programs. Congressional Research Service, crs.gov. May 24th, 2022. 13. Middle East and Africa Ice Maker Market, Industry Trends and Forecast to 2029. DataBridge Market Research, databridgemarketresearch.com. Accessed February 2023. 14. Starbucks, Coffee Company, starbucks.com. Accessed February 2023. 15. Diamond Green, How Starbucks Took on Italy's Coffee Culture, cnbc.com. October 17th, 2022. Mikey Bamford. Make Milan your next step this summer and head to Starbucks EMEA's flagship store. The Reserve Roastery Milano, Starbucks, stories.starbucks.com. Accessed February 2023. 16. Taylor Labs, Sierra Nevada continues partnership with Bittsburger Brewery. Porchdrinking.com. Accessed February 2023. Making Beer, Making Friends. Bittsburger.com. Accessed February 2023. 17. C. Fred Bergston, Current Trade Policies and the U.S. Economy. Peterson Institute for International Economics, PIIE.com. June 19th, 2019. C. Fred Bergston, The United States vs. China, The Quest for Global Economic Leadership. Polity, April 18th, 2022. 18. World Integrated Trade Solutions, wits.worldbank.org. Accessed January 2022. United States, Exports of Goods and Services, Trading Economics, tradingeconomics.com. Accessed February 2023. Jobs supported by exports, 2021. International Trade Administration, trade.gov, accessed February 2023. 19. U.S. Census Bureau, census.gov/foreign trade and statistics, accessed January 2023. U.S. trade deficit by country, World Population Review, worldpopulationreview.com, accessed February 2023. 20. U.S. to impose high tariff on Russian aluminum, Global Village Space, globalvillagespace.com, February 7th, 2023. 21. The Coca-Cola System, The Coca-Cola Company, coca-colacompany.com, accessed February 2023. 22. Samantha Loveday, Disney holds firm as world's leading licensor, licensing source.net, accessed February 2023. 23. U.S. Commercial Service, export.gov, accessed February 2023. U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA.gov, accessed February 2023. 24. Bethany Byron, why Barre fitness chain Physique 57 is going all in on Digital Insider. BusinessInsider.com, March 21st, 2021. Physique 57, physique57.com, accessed January 2023. 25. Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory, rmcf.com, accessed February 2023. 26. Domino's, biz.domino's.com, accessed February 2023. 27. Jennifer Schaefer, seaweed chicken and mochi. Just a few of the surprising flavors in Dunkin' Donuts around the world. Taste of Home, tasteofhome.com, February 25th, 2022. Dunkin' Brands, dunkindonuts.com, accessed February 2023. 28. Medical Device Contract Manufacturing Update, Duff and Phelps, duffandphelps.com, accessed February 2023. Medical Device Contract Manufacturing Market, Markets and Markets, marketsandmarkets.com, accessed February 2023. Global Contract Manufacturing Market, Industry Trends and Forecast, Data Bridge Market Research, databridgemarketresearch.com, accessed February 2023. 29. Mark Woodbury, expanding the Universal brand with new destinations and experiences, Comcast, corporate.comcast.com, January 24th, 2023. 30. Ben Foldy, GM, VW, build up battery supply chains amid EV push, The Wall Street Journal, January 4th, 2022. Morgan Korn, automakers look to the South to build electric vehicle batteries, ABC News, abcnews.go.com, July 17th, 2022. Jack Ewing, electric vehicles could match gasoline cars on price this year. The New York Times, newyorktimes.com, February 10th, 2023. 31. Galvany Bioelectronics announces world's first investigational treatment of rheumatoid arthritis using splenic nerve stimulation. Business Wire, businesswire.com, January 26th, 2022. Galvany Bioelectronics, galvany.bio.com, accessed January 2023. 32. University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, upmc.com, accessed February 2023. 33. Fujifilm Business Innovation Corp., fujifilm.com, accessed February 2023. 34. Nestle SA, nestle.com, accessed February 2023. 35. Hyulang 10, the world's largest sovereign wealth fund, says it'll dump its Russian assets over the Ukraine invasion. Entrepreneur.com, February 28, 2022. Sam Meredith, Norway's gigantic sovereign wealth fund, loses a record $164 billion. CNBC.com, accessed February 2023. 36. Kayla Bailey, experts sound the alarm over China buying U.S. land near military bases. Foxbusiness.com, accessed February 2023. Lars Erik Schonander and Geoffrey Kane, China is buying the farm. The Wall Street Journal, September 8, 2022. Nicholas Gordon, Montana senator, wants to ban Chinese ownership of U.S. farmland. Fortune, February 13, 2023. Christina Peterson and Anthony DeBarros, farms become U.S.-China flashpoint. The Wall Street Journal, February 7, 2023. 37. E.S. Anderson, Can We Talk? Communicating Moral Concern in an Era of Polarized Politics. Journal of Practical Ethics, 2022. 38. Aldi History, Aldi, corporate.aldi.us, accessed February 2023. Who owns Aldi? Grocery stores. The interesting history of Aldi. Financial Pilgrimage, financialpilgrimage.com, January 31st, 2023. 39. Steve Farrell, Lidl Scales, Backstore Opening Plans. The Grocer, thegrocer.com, February 7th, 2023. Lidl.com, accessed February 2023. 40. James Vincent, The Battle of the Standards, Why the U.S. and U.K. Can't Stop Fighting the Metric System. The Verge, theverge.com, January 16th, 2023. 41. Tom Goldman, Qatar bans beer sales at World Cup stadiums 2 days before it begins. npr.org, November 18th, 2022. Tariq Panja, ban on beer is latest flashpoint in World Cup culture clash. The New York Times, NewYorkTimes.com, November 18th, 2022. Katie Dayton, how Budweiser tackled a beer-free World Cup. The Wall Street Journal, WSJ.com, February 9th, 2023. 42. Luca Ventura, the world's richest and poorest countries, 2022. Global Finance, GFMAG.com, August 1st, 2022. 43. Ezgi Erkoyan, Turkish lira slips toward low in post-rate cut sell-off. Reuters.com, August 19th, 2022. Natasha Turak, Erdogan blames Turkey's currency problems on foreign financial tools as central bank reserves fall. CNBC, CNBC.com. January 13th, 2022. Ben Hubbard. Skyrocketing prices in Turkey hurt families and tarnish Erdogan. The New York Times, NewYorkTimes.com. December 5th, 2022. Turkish Lira, TRY. Corporate Finance Institute, CorporateFinanceInstitute.com. January 24th, 2023. 44. World Trade Organization, WTO.org, accessed February 2023. 45. Simon Constable, How Sanctions on Russia Will Hurt and Help the World's Economies, Time.com, March 7th, 2022. Marcus Liu, A Recent History of U.S. Sanctions on Russia, Visual Capitalist, visualcapitalist.com, March 17th, 2022. Gene Whalen and Catherine Belton, Sanctions Haven't Stopped Russia, but a new oil ban could cut deeper. The Washington Post, washingtonpost.com, February 15th, 2023. 46. Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD.org, accessed January 2023. Transparency International, transparency.org, accessed January 2023. 47. Eric Martin and Mackenzie Hawkins, U.S. firms renew plea for Biden to end Trump-era China tariffs, Bloomberg, Bloomberg.com. January 19th, 2023. Clark Packard and Alfredo Carrillo Obregon, comments to USTR show the real-world harms of the Trump-Biden China tariffs. Cato Institute, cato.org, February 2nd, 2023. 48. Quota Enforcement and Administration, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, cbp.gov, accessed February 2023. 49. Embargoed and Sanctioned Countries, University of Pittsburgh Office of Trade Compliance, tradecompliance.pitt.edu, accessed February 2023. Embargoed Countries, 2023. World Population Review, worldpopulationreview.com, accessed February 2023. 50. Maria Jose Espinoza, Maria Carla Nodarcy Venancio, and Natalie Amodit. U.S.-Cuba Relations, the Old, the New, and What Should Come Next. The Washington Office on Latin America, WOLA.org. December 16th, 2022. Cuba and U.S. spar over UN resolution to end embargo. Reuters, Reuters.com. November 3rd, 2022. Syra Ortiz Blaines, how the 61-year-old embargo is blocking Cubans from finding sponsors in the U.S. Miami Herald, miamiherald.com. February 17th, 2023. 51. World Trade Organization, WTO.org, accessed February 2023. 52. World Trade Organization, Congressional Research Service, crsreports.congress.gov, accessed February 2023. Greg L.P., Who is Going to Police the New World Trading System? The Wall Street Journal, WSJ.com, January 17th, 2023. 53. World Economic Outlook Database, April 2022. International Monetary Fund, IMF.org, accessed February 2023. 54. Jessica Parker. Brexit. What can we expect from a deal on NI protocol? BBC, BBC.com. February 18th, 2023. 55. EU looks to tighten borders over migration concerns. RTE, RTE.ie. February 9th, 2023. Fu Yun Chi. EU lawmakers body agrees on safeguards against illegal data transfers. Reuters, Reuters.com. February 9th, 2023. Andrew E. Kramer, Russia-Ukraine War, The New York Times, NewYorkTimes.com. February 9th, 2023. Chapter 4. Demanding ethical and socially responsible behavior.